Greetings, everyone, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for December 13th, 2020. I'm a little disheveled today, so please bear with me. Big week last week, some big milestones for SpaceX and ULA and some others. Let's go ahead and get into it. First off, last Monday, the SpaceX Dragon 2 cargo module, CRS-21, arrived at the International Space Station after a flight of about 24 hours, having launched Sunday morning before the last Space Week. Let's see. And so they have the Dragon 2 cargo module is the cargo equivalent of the Crew Dragon module. It's the same spacecraft with a slightly different, with some modifications. For example, the Dragon 2 cargo does not have Super Draco thrusters because it doesn't need a launch abort capability like the Crew Dragon does. And it has, like the Crew Dragon, it also has autonomous docking capability, which is very cool. So unlike the previous Dragons, it is able to dock itself autonomously to the space station. It doesn't need to be grappled by Canadarm and then berthed to a berthing port. So they also have a camera. Excuse me. They also have a camera on the new Dragon 2, which gave us some really amazing views of the space station as it approached. Now, we often get views of the space station from the Soyuz spacecraft as it approaches, but they are like infrared and black and white, and they're not nearly as aesthetically pleasing as this right here. This is just, we haven't seen anything like this since, at least I don't think we've seen anything like this since the shuttle program, when they would do fly-arounds of the space station on the shuttle. So, so it approached and docked with the space station just fine. No problems whatsoever. We see here, this is their docking cam on the Dragon 2 as it approaches the port, the docking port. Now, the way they perform docking is they perform a soft capture where the spacecraft will basically make contact and grab onto the space station, and then they engage. Well, they used to, for like Soyuz, and other berthed spacecraft, they would engage a series of 16 bolts in order to perform a hard capture, but I guess they use some sort of hooks with the Dragon 2 and with the Crew Dragon. But yep, so flawless execution there. Good job, SpaceX. Then on Wednesday, the Chinese Long March 11 launched the GCAM satellite, or the GCAM mission, which is the gravitational wave high energy electromagnetic counterpart all-sky monitor. It consists of two small satellites that will detect the electromagnetic counterparts of gravitational waves and other astrophysical signals, which will help with the study of neutron stars and black holes. And we didn't actually have footage of the moment of ignition at launch, so I'm guessing that was just some video picked up from a third-party bystander. Let's see. Yes. I need to queue up a video here. Let me go ahead. Yeah, so on Wednesday was a biggie. Wednesday, we finally, at long last, had the 12.5 kilometer test flight of SpaceX Starship Sn8. So let me go ahead and play a little bit of that for you. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but let's see here. Okay, let's start at T-minus 19.
Stage prop is go for flight.
T-minus 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff. All teams triage alarms.
So the whole flight lasted, what was it, like 6-7 minutes, something like that. So they ascended on 3 Raptor engines up to a height of 12.5 kilometers beautifully. Now, there were a couple of, let's see if we can, okay, so yeah, so they have the engine view in the lower right, they have the external cam on the upper right, and then the ground view on the left. So as they ascended, if we track forward here a little bit, okay, watch the engines. So they start gimbaling like crazy. There's flames in the compartment, and now there's only 2 engines lit. Now, as we were watching, we weren't sure whether that was supposed to be intentional or not. There's also a fire that kind of burns through the skirt area there. That was actually intentional. So what they did was, as they were ascending, they extinguished one of the 3 engines. By the way, that front engine facing us there is engine number 42, which is, of course, the Raptor answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. But they cut off one engine, and then they cut off the other engine for the final phase of their ascent, which slowed them down to, so that they could approach their target altitude rather than just cutting them all off at once. So when all 3 engines are firing, it looked, they were in such synchronicity that they looked to be physically connected, but they actually gimbal independently of each other. And they're able to gimbal meaning turn and thrust in different directions. So they actually are able to gimbal quite widely, which, we see again when the 3rd engine cuts off here. So that sort of wild gyrating of the Elvis-style gyration of the engines there is done in order to keep the craft stable as the transition is, excuse me, I'm not feeling well, so my voice is a little rough. But that wild gimbaling is done to keep the craft stable while the transition, the thrust transition is taking place while the 2nd engine's being shut down. So as it approaches so it starts, I'm not sure exactly why here at 4 minutes and 25 seconds-ish, this steam or smoke or whatever this is starts emanating from the craft. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it wasn't something that SpaceX or Elon expressed any concern over. And so then they tilt the one remaining engine and use the cold gas thrusters as well as the flaps, the pivotable control surfaces, those fins, to reorient it into a belly flop maneuver where it descended in a beautiful swan dive. It was just rock solid. The control that they had over its descent with these flaps. You can see them kind of actuating on the right there. Was beautiful. Then it descends through this sort of mystery haze layer, which was only visible from one of the cameras, and fire the engines, flip over into a vertical orientation, and boom. All right. So I'm going to pause it right there. So what happened was, now, not being a rocket engineer, I am not sure what a header tank is, but it's involved somehow with the feeding of fuel to these Raptor engines. And what happened was they had low pressure in their header tank, which caused the engines not to receive enough fuel, which I presume is why one of the two, so it only needed two engines to land. That's why the only two engines were lit, because they only needed two. However, one of those engines failed. The engine lost combustion or whatever. It lost its thrust. And what we see here is this bright green flame, which was very striking. It was like really green and really bright. Now, as other folks have pointed out, such as Scott Manley and I'm sure Tim Dodd and others, in the Falcon 9, which has the Merlin engine, which is RP1 fueled rather than liquid methane, you do see a green flash on engine ignition because of this liquid called TTEB, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the chemical name, but this TTEB is used to initiate the ignition of the engine, but they don't use that technique on Starship. They have basically a spark plug that sparks the engine ignition. And so this is not a TTEB green flame. The theory is that what we are seeing is actually the copper inside the engine being consumed and burned, which is why Scott Manley calls it an engine-rich exhaust. It's actually, the rocket is chewing up the engine and spitting it out in the form of this green flame, which is quite striking to see, but it's not good for the engine at all. The engine was, I don't know the serial number of that engine, but it would have been quite probably not refurbishable, even if the following hadn't happened. And let's I'll let you hear the following. Yeah, so big rud on landing. I do not know if they fired the engines too late, but I do know that they did not have all the thrust they needed. Now, if you recall from Falcon 9, from the many, many Falcon 9 booster landings we've seen, it actually does its landing burn quite late, and they call it a suicide burn, and that's because even with one Merlin engine, it is too powerful and they are not able to throttle it down enough to actually hover the booster. So what they do is they time it such that the rocket, the Falcon 9 booster, reaches a zero velocity at the same moment that it makes contact with the drone ship or the landing pad. And I presume that that's what they are doing here as well. I don't know specifically what the thrust to weight, and throttle ability of the Raptor engine is with regards to the mass of the whatever remains of the Starship prototype, but it definitely came in too hot. Now, it was missing one of the two engines, and I don't know if the thrust on the one remaining engine was full or not. That sort of internal engineering data isn't available to the likes of us. But so this is actually in my synchronized and slow-mo video that I posted after the test. Let me show you just real quick the slow-mo of the takeoff and the quote-unquote landing. Big bada boom. So I also did a super slow-mo of the 10. So that was at 25% speed. I also did a super slow-mo of the final explosion. Let's check that out. Because why not, right? Bada boom. So, so despite the violent end to this test flight, it was actually considered a great and resounding success. I mean, prior to, Elon only gave it a 1 chance in 3 of meeting all mission objectives. Interestingly, not unlike Sean Connery's 1 chance in 3 that they gave the Red October mission, defection mission of succeeding. But going back a few years. But yeah, so total Michael Bay explosion at the end there. But they got all the data they needed, and they, 95% success, like I said. So in other SpaceX news, SN9 did not have such a good day. So here we have Starship Sn9, which apparently it was sitting in the high bay in the SpaceX assembly area, or the shipyard, and apparently its stand partially collapsed, and it sort of slumped over after seeing its brother SN8 meet such a fiery end. So it's unclear how much damage there might have been. I know that after this photo was taken, SpaceX... Now, I had wondered when I saw this if maybe SpaceX had a crane assembly built into the high bay so that they could kind of lift it up from within the high bay, but they rolled over one of their cranes and poked the crane in there, and I don't know if they've got it upright yet or not, but unfortunately, I don't know what kind of damage there might be to SN9. I haven't done a great deal of looking into it. I mean, there could because these things this is not, Battlestar Galactica. It's not some military grade, hardened and armored thing. I mean, it is made of stainless steel, but it's thin stainless steel, and it's intended to handle heat, not to handle crushing forces and twisting forces. Now, looking at SN8's flight, it handled now, normally, if you see a rocket in the atmosphere turn sideways, that sucker is going to break apart and explode. SN8 did fine. It held together beautifully until the very end, when it didn't have enough thrust in order to land safely. So, so this is not your father's rocket ship. But, I mean, it could still have sustained damage to the flaps, the skirt at the bottom. I don't know if I don't think there were any engines in it. I'm not actually sure. Hopefully there were not any engines in it at the time. The nose might have been crumpled, and I'm not sure. I mean, it seems pretty rigid there, but there could have been some sort of distressing of like in the middle where the forces are being applied from the leaning in a direction it's not supposed to, but I guess we'll see. Okay, so Station 240 says SN9 is upright now, still needs to be put on a new stand. Crane is still attached. Yeah, so hopefully it's not too badly damaged. And if it is, I mean, one of the benefits of SpaceX's processes and the fact that they're using a very common, I mean, if a specific alloy, but a very common material of stainless steel for these starships, is that they are able to churn them out pretty quickly. as opposed to like carbon fiber, which is really, tough to work with and expensive. And if it gets damaged, you can't just buff it out or whatever. So, yeah, so that's SN9. Now, after the, I don't have the tweet queued up here, but after the SN8, actually it was at the end of the SN8 test broadcast that SpaceX said, congrats team, SN9 is next. Well, maybe it'll be SN9 or maybe one of the other serial numbers will fly next. We'll have to wait and see. As with everything SpaceX, we will have to wait and see. But yeah, whatever their next step is, it is sure to be industry disruptive. Yeah. So Starship video. Oh yeah. Okay, so here we go. Yes. Excellent suggestion. Chris V, can you show Starship video from below near landing pad? So yeah, they didn't post this on their SpaceX, on their YouTube channel, but they did post it on Twitter, which Twitter doesn't have the greatest video quality, but yes, I actually have that right here. So SpaceX actually produced, or they put out, this is video, even though the sky looks impossibly blue. It was actually a very, well, due to not only the camera, the filter, and the exposure settings, but and the fact that it's looking straight up, it's not catching a lot of glare from the humid coastal air there in Boca Chica. But anyway, this is video from basically right on the landing pad, looking up at Starship Sn8 as it descends to the launch pad, and this is in real time. So let me expand this. I'm not sure if it has audio, but I'll mute myself and see. No, I don't think it has audio, but check this out. This is a creepy view. I saw this and I was like, is this real? It doesn't even look real. Starship coming straight at you. Boom. And then we see the nose as it is engulfed in flame. But, yeah, thanks to SpaceX for posting that, although I wish we had a higher resolution copy of it. It's in 720p, but it looks like about maybe 480p original resolution. One more time for good measure. We've never, like, you don't see angles like this. It's such a cool angle. All right. Let's see. What is up next? On Thursday, congratulations to ULA, because after approximately 13 unlucky tries to launch the NROL-44 mission, ULA finally got it off the ground. Now, this is a big billion-dollar spy satellite for the National Reconnaissance Office. And so let's see. Okay, what are we at here? All right, let me go ahead and play this. I'm not sure how close to launch we are. I think we should just be a few seconds.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, main engine ignition, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV Heavy rocket carrying the NROL-44 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office.
Yeah, so for those of you not familiar with the Delta IV Heavy, it begins its launch with a big fireball, because the liquid hydrogen starts flowing before the liquid oxygen, and upon ignition, all that extra, and first of all, hydrogen is the lightest gas, and as such it begins rising up the side of the rocket. And when the engines are ignited, all that excess hydrogen burns away, and it burns up the side of the rocket. Now, the orange coating on the outside of the rocket is the same sort of material that was used on the Space Shuttle external fuel tank in order to insulate it. The intention is to mitigate the warming effects on the fuel inside, because the fuel is cryogenic. It has to be kept super cold temperatures, or else it needs to be vented, because it's constantly trying to vaporize as its temperature increases. And so, yeah, but that orange foam material is designed so that it can, it may blacken, but it's designed to take the heat of that initial burn. The launch, despite all the delays, the issues within the rocket, the issues with the swing arm retraction system that caused them a couple months of delays, the launch was flawless, and it was beautiful, and they apparently deployed their satellite as expected. Now, we didn't get to see that because being a National Reconnaissance Office mission, the destination orbit of the satellite was classified, and so we're not privy to that footage. But and then afterwards, after their words during their broadcast, they played this really impressive sort of Disney-style light show where they projected a bunch of scenes on top of. It was some sort of event where they projected a bunch of scenes over the top of their Delta IV Heavy rocket at their facility there in Cape Canaveral. It was really quite impressive. Though I wonder, how much that sort of media outreach effort cost them, and whether that was an efficient use of taxpayer dollars. But that's neither here nor there. And then finally, today? Gosh, was it today? I think it was today. Yeah, it was today. See, I'm such a mess. I can't even remember what day it is. So, yes, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 with the SXM-7 Sirius XM satellite for Sirius XM satellite radio service, which is where Howard Stern has called his home for quite some time. Let's check that out.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, and we have liftoff.
So that satellite was headed for geostationary orbit, or geostationary. Well, what the rocket does is it gets it into a geostationary transfer orbit, which once the satellite reaches geostationary, it fires its own thrusters to circularize its orbit in a geostationary position, where it will hover over the same spot on land permanently, basically. So that was a success, and I think that was all the launches last week, all the events last week. Now, yeah, so looking ahead to this week, what do we got? What indeed? Okay. So on Monday, December 14th, so first of all, let me link this. Schedule. Oh, somebody already linked. Who did that? James, thank you. Christine Gray. Very kind of you. So Monday, December 14th at 12:50 a.m. Eastern, 5:50 a.m. GMT, a Russian Angara A5 rocket will launch on its second test flight with a dummy payload up to geosynchronous orbit. The first test flight was way back in 2014 in December, which was to a low Earth orbit. I'm not actually sure why there was a 6-year delay in between tests, but it is possible that's not publicly available information because it's a Russian thing. But now Angara A5s use the URM-1, or Universal Rocket Module 1, for both the first stage core and all 4 of the strap-on boosters. So it's kind of like the Delta IV Heavy uses the common core whatever booster, the common core booster for all 3 of its first stage boosters, the core and the sides. The Angara A5 uses URM-1 for all 5 of its first stage boosters. And then the second stage uses the URM-2. And all of those URMs use RP-1 and LOX for fuel, similar to the Falcon 9 and the Saturn V of yore. The donut-shaped Breeze M third stage uses hypergolic UDMH, and the KVTK, which stands for some Russian name that I can't pronounce, fourth stage, which is still in development, will use liquid hydrogen and LOX. I'm not expecting, or we're not expecting, any live coverage of the launch because, again, it's a Russian government launch and not affiliated with NASA. And I should mention that it'll be launching from the far northern Plesetsk Cosmodrome. For those of you in Plesetsk, if there's anybody watching. Also on Monday, starting at 9:40 a.m. Eastern, 2:40 p.m. GMT, will be some live camera views of the total solar eclipse in Chile. Now, I think this is the only total solar eclipse of 2020, and it is cutting across a strip of Chile and Argentina that are fairly sparsely populated. And I had heard from someone that it's predicted to be cloudy, so hopefully somebody down there can view it. But yeah, so I will be providing a copy of that footage from NASA for you tomorrow. So hopefully they do get an actual view of the eclipse and not just darkened clouds. Now, you know what I should do? I should remind you, this is a total opportunity for me to self-plug here. I should remind you what a total solar eclipse can look like, because in 2017, dagnabbit, I swear, D90 size, here we go. Look at that. So in 2017, the Great North American Total Solar Eclipse, I traveled with my family over to Oregon, my home state, to, the trip did sort of double, triple duty, because we got to visit with family and friends from back home. I got to introduce my girls to Oregon, which is a beautiful state, even though it was on fire at the time. And it was also predicted to be regions of Oregon where the eclipse totality path passed over were predicted to be amongst the most promising locations along the entire eclipse path as far as percentage chance of clear skies in August, in the month of August. So it was just sort of a confluence of factors that brought us to Oregon. And we got an amazing view. Amazing view. It was life-changing. It was my first total solar eclipse. And if any of you have the opportunity to travel to see a total solar eclipse, it is stunning. It is unlike anything, I promise you, it is unlike anything you've ever seen. And no pictures or video online can do it justice. You have to experience it firsthand. But anyway, yeah, so that'll be on Monday morning, starting at 9:40 a.m. Then, also on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT, Astrospace plans to launch their Rocket 3.1. There won't be a stream for that one, but we'll hear about it afterwards. Now, Astra has had some bad luck. I mean, not bad luck, but space is hard. Astra is an up-and-coming rocket company. They have their launch facility on Kodiak Island in Alaska, which is not the sort of place you'd think of having great weather for launches. And in fact, it doesn't. It doesn't. They have a lot of weather delays. And their previous rocket, the Rocket 3.1, failed to launch earlier this year. It launched, but then its trajectory faltered and it broke up and exploded shortly like it was maybe 40 seconds into flight or something. And then prior to that, their Rocket 3.0, they had a scrub, which was actually live streamed, and then after that they decided not to live stream their launch attempts. But then that rocket was lost subsequently in I think it was a fueling operation or something. It was a test, and then it blew up on the pad. So they've had a rough time, but hopefully 3.2 gets up there into a low Earth orbit. And that'll be happening on Monday. Then on Tuesday, December 15th at 4 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. GMT, a Rocket Lab Electron rocket nicknamed Owl's Night Begins will launch the Strix Alpha Synthetic Aperture Radar Satellite for Japan-based SynSpective. There will be a live stream here on Raw Space for that one. Now, that was supposed to launch last week, but it got delayed, I think, due to weather down there in New Zealand, where they launch from. I'm not actually sure when they plan to launch, because Rocket Lab built a launch facility at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, which is on Wallops Island, Virginia, where the Antares rocket and some other rockets like Minotaur launch from. But I haven't heard much about when they're actually going to start launching from there, because currently, even though it was founded by a New Zealander, Peter Beck, and they launch from New Zealand, Rocket Lab is actually based in the U.S., probably for security purposes, so they can do NRO launches. But yes, so now, yeah, they've been working on their U.S. launch capability, but I'm not sure if it's ready yet. Maybe it was delayed by COVID, I don't know. Then on, Wednesday, Cygnus NG-14 cargo craft was supposed to detach from the ISS and deorbit, and containing, trash and just junk from the ISS. But apparently NASA pushed that out because it was taken off the schedule. So stay tuned to Raw Space for a new date on that event. That will be live streamed when it happens. Then on Thursday, December 17th, at 4:11 a.m. Eastern, 9:11 a.m. GMT, an Indian PSLV rocket will launch the CMS-1 communication satellite. There will not be a stream for that because Doordarshan doesn't like to play nice, which is the Indian pseudo-official broadcast agency, and they broadcast the ISRO launches. They do not like to play nice, and they like to copyright their launch streams. So I'm protesting them, but I trust that it will launch without a problem. India hasn't had any launch mishaps since I've been doing this channel, I don't think. So good for them. Also on Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. GMT, a SpaceX Falcon 9 will launch the NROL-108 spy satellite for the National Reconnaissance Office. Yet another spy satellite. That one will be streamed. Then on Friday, December 18th at 7:26 a.m. Eastern, 12:26 p.m. GMT, a Russian Soyuz rocket will launch the fourth batch of satellites for the OneWeb Internet constellation, which is... you can think of it kind of like Starlink, except with a lot fewer satellites. But it's a low Earth orbit broadband internet satellite constellation. Now, this launch was delayed by a few months because back earlier this year, OneWeb actually went bankrupt. Apparently, they got their finances worked out, which is good, because they've already got a bunch of satellites up there. 3 previous launches. However, being a non-NASA affiliated Russian launch, we're not expecting any live coverage. Yeah, see, SpaceX, they have quite a business plan. I mean, they provide their own launch services. They provide most of the rest of the world's launch services. And, I mean, they launch more than most other countries combined, including Russia. Now, Russia had like 14 launches this year. SpaceX, if the remaining 2 launches in December go off without a hitch, they will have had, I think, 24 launches this year. The only entity in the world that has more launches than SpaceX is China, which are at like 31 or 32 or something like that. But, or maybe it's 37. But 4 of those failed. They had 4 failures on their manifest. So, yeah, so you go SpaceX. Yeah, so I think that is all the events coming up this week. I would like to take a moment to thank our latest channel members this week. Rawthling Fanjin, Rawthling Floyd Warrel, Rawstronaut Chris Beldon, and Rawthling Sam Valášek. If I got that one right this time. So welcome to you all. And I'll go ahead and link the member thingy for those who are interested. Members. If I could spell it right, members. All right. Now, questions. Live Q&A. Put that text up there. Raw space. I swear. I cannot take myself anywhere. So I can't pay too much attention to the chat while I am presenting, because I have to present. I have to read my notes, I have to pay attention to what I'm clicking on, and I have to present. So this whole bloody time I have had some irrelevant piece of caption down there at the bottom of the screen, so I am sorry for that. Laugh at me if you want. I don't care. So I'm gonna hold on a sec, let me see here. Thank you so much, Chris V, for your assistance. Did not know if you were doing this for me, but you sure pulled through. Questions for Raw Space. Yes, so if you have questions, please make sure to tag my name in the chat, so I'm sure to, I or my trusty assistant, Chris V, are sure to notice it amongst the other chat. Let's see. Heel Ray Beast. What date will the 4 astronauts come back? So that's referring to the 4 Crew Dragon astronauts in the Crew 1 mission that launched a few weeks ago. So Expedition Crew missions last about 6 months, but let me look real quick on the projection to see, or on the expedition list to see when they're slated to come back. Scroll way down to the bottom. Shannon Walker, Michael Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Suichi Noguchi will return in Q2 2021, which means, I don't know, end of mission May. So May time frame is when we're looking at for that. MVM Motovlog Music. Always good to see you, by the way. Does the Starship use Gyroscope to orient the Raptor's gimbal? I do not know. I don't know if anybody knows, except for SpaceX. I mean, that's sort of proprietary technology. And I'm not sure what, I mean, sometimes Elon drops tidbits. There's not much other data available for internal SpaceX engineering designs because pretty much everybody but Elon is bound by non-disclosure agreements. So if they talk about SpaceX systems, internal workings, they will very likely lose their jobs. Except for, I forget her name, that one presenter who posted pictures of the Starlink UFO module, and she obviously did not lose her job, but she's sort of one of the faces of SpaceX, so maybe she had special consideration there. But so Raw Space, what happened with your hair? I didn't brush it today. It's COVID time, so so I put on the hat. Is SN9 okay? Okay, TMG dude, is SM9 okay? Oh, that was Maria Kutujan who asked that. TMG dude, is SN9 okay? Yeah, again, we're not sure the exact state of SN9. But hopefully the spotters at Lab Padre and S Padre and Maria, the Marias, I guess there's more than one Maria down there, with their zoom lenses. Hopefully they've been able to sort of ascertain whether they can see any crumples or damage externally. But hopefully it's all right. MVM Motovlog Music, wonder when the equipment taken up in the Dragon trunk will be installed. Yeah, I neglected to mention earlier, or I didn't mention earlier, that in the CRS-21 mission, which the Dragon 2 cargo mission that docked with the ISS, the trunk, the bottom portion that has of the Dragon 2 craft that has the solar panels on it, the part that is jettisoned prior to re-entry, contained the Bishop airlock module, which is the first commercial airlock to be used on, or to be employed on the ISS, which is very cool. Like it's neat to see more and more commercial hardware like that is non-government agency contracted hardware, and systems being used in space. The more commercial space is, the more ubiquitous it will become. Ultimately leading to humanity's expansion and conquest of the great beyond. So, Mark Desire, thickness of the stainless steel on Starship, I am not sure. You can maybe poke around the Starship Wikipedia page. They may mention the alloy and the thickness of the steel. I'm not sure. Heel Ray Beast, what about the Starship that will dock with the ISS? Will it be thick because people aboard? So the material of the boosters is going to be very different than the material of a crew capsule. Now the crew capsule is the payload of a crewed launch. The booster just needs to get it up there. The booster needs to be as light as possible while safely containing all of the fuel it needs to launch the crew to their target trajectory, orbital trajectory. So, like the crew, yes, the crew capsule has to be, reinforced, and it has to be multi-layered, and it has to contain an ablative heat shield, etc., etc. Speaking of the Crew Dragon, whereas the boosters, they're not disposable in the case of SpaceX, but they don't need to be hardened like that. Like, for example, the crew module re-enters the atmosphere at approximately 17,000 miles per hour. That's orbital velocity. The Falcon 9 Stage 1 booster only re-enters at about 3,500 miles per hour. So it undergoes much less heating, much less stress than the than the crew modules do. Mr. Terrible, what percentage of the total cost of one of these rockets would just the outer shell be? What percentage of the total cost in the outer shell? Probably not much. I mean, especially in the case of Starship, like this, the stainless steel is not expensive material. Now, it needs to be carefully manufactured. It needs to be very carefully welded so that it maintains its integrity. But the material itself is much, much cheaper than like the carbon composites that are used in the Falcon 9. Or even aluminum. Like stainless steel, I think, is even cheaper than aluminum. So, But I don't know as far as percentage of cost for different portions of the vehicle. I don't know. I mean, obviously the engines are going to be your big ticket item. The engines are probably the most important. I mean, the most expensive part of the craft, because they're incredibly complicated, containing a great variety of materials and precision, you know, crafts. And if you've ever seen a picture of a Raptor engine, those are incredibly complex, like probably the most complicated engines that have ever flown. Mark Desire, the solar eclipse in South America, Southern Hemisphere? Yes. The total solar eclipse will only be viewable on land from southern Chile and Argentina. I wanted to put a picture up on the screen, but the website that has the interactive map of the eclipse simply wasn't loading in my browser, my Opera browser that I use for streaming, and I didn't have time to pull up a picture. But yeah, it's southern South America, and that's it. Mark Desire, Starship in orbit around Earth might not even happen in 2021. I mean, I wouldn't count that out for sure, because I mean, they had a very much mostly successful high altitude test flight with just the 3 Raptor engines, and I'm having to ration my coffee because there's almost none in there, so I take a tiny little sip to wet the old whistle. So yeah, no, I think they can definitely achieve orbit in 2021. I think there's supposed to be a total of 6 engines on the Starship final version, which is more than enough, you know, to get into orbit. They may be able to even achieve orbit with just the 3 engines. I did some rough calculations, and after the test live stream, the flight test, I did some rough calculations that the 3 Raptor engines produce about, I don't know, 70 or 80%, maybe 70% of the thrust of the 9 Merlin engines on a Falcon 9. And what I have no idea about is the relative mass of a fully fueled Falcon 9 versus a partially fueled Starship Sn8. So I don't know for sure if they would have been able to achieve orbit, but certainly with the 6 engines they would be able to. Tig Rayhoff, raw space, making lockdown less boring. It is you, dear viewers, that make my life less boring. Actually, my life isn't particularly boring. It's just mundane, I guess. We're all cooped up. So, Alex P. So when are they going to launch the Starship again? Well, probably a little later than originally anticipated because of the SN9, the Leaning Tower of Boca Chica, the SN9, you know, potential damage to that iteration. So my guess would be January sometime, but could be later. I mean, again, we'll have to wait and see. SpaceX moves pretty quickly though, and they're able to you know, get, like, yeah, I mean, even if there's dents, it may still be flyable. I don't know. I mean, it's a robust vehicle. It just can't handle smacking into the ground at roughly 50 miles per hour as SN8 did. Bruce Tharp, if it was possible someday and the idea was considered, do you think it would be worth it to restore all surviving space shuttles to space-worthy condition? Definitely not. It wouldn't be advisable even if it were feasible. The space shuttle had as our trusty moderator Rockin' Robbins 13 will enthusiastically attest to, the space shuttle had some critical design flaws, and it is not a safe design for a vehicle. Now, it did an amazing amount of work for us and was mostly successful, but yeah, no, I think that the shuttles are best honored in well-preserved static displays indoors, like the exhibit at the Kennedy Space Center, the what was it, Atlantis exhibit, which I saw last year when I went there with my kids. Oh my gosh, it was so cool to see a shuttle up close. I wish we'd had more time, but it was the end of the day and our time was running out. But yeah, no, I think that the future requires a little more safely designed vehicles. Now, Tim Dodd had the Everyday Astronaut had a whole video talking about why doesn't Starship have a launch escape capability, like a way for the crew to escape in the event of a mishap or whatever, if they need to, get away from them, if there's a contingency with the craft and they have to get away. He went into all sorts of analysis of what incidents have happened in the past and were launch escape systems even helpful. But it was an interesting video. You should check it out. Because, obviously the space shuttle did not have a launch escape system, and neither does Starship. But Starship is a fundamentally different design. You don't have those big wings that are made of very fragile, reinforced carbon material. The ceramic tiles that are susceptible to being punctured by foam falling from this huge, enormous external fuel tank that is situated above those wings. You simply don't have any part of that with the Starship design. You also don't have solid rocket boosters, no O-ring problems. I mean, every ship has its own challenges, but yeah. So, Tigrayhoff, do you know how we can find out about the experiments aboard ISS? NASA has, each mission. So if you go on Wikipedia, some people malign it for not always having accurate information, but it contains just an unbelievable wealth of data. If you go and look at the Wikipedia page for any launch to the ISS, you can look up the list of the expedition launches, the crew launches. You can look up all of the cargo launches. For example, CRS-21 that just launched with the Dragon 2 cargo spacecraft, and it tells you there, people, interested parties, enthusiasts, industry insiders sometimes, they post, information about these things. And so you can see at least the big ticket items of different experiments and cargo that are on board each flight. And additionally, NASA has websites that tell you all about the different sorts of science they're doing on the space station. Some of it is proprietary, some of it is classified government, some of it is public. They do all sorts of stuff. All right. Dennis. Ra, how are you? I'm doing all right. Needing a refill, but that'll have to wait. About shuttle. What does it mean? Oh, about shuttle. Atarusho. Probably not, as the SRBs and main tanks are being cannibalized for SLS, and the surviving engines are museum pieces. He was referring to the question about repurposing the shuttles or refurbishing them. Dennis has a question. I'm in love with astronomy, but I don't know how it is possible we cannot see the stars. I'm embarrassed I don't know this. So if you're referring to why you don't see the stars in videos from space, or like, for example, the Earth views that are playing behind me, that's because I actually posted a video demonstrating the photographic principle of why you can't see the stars. The simple answer is sunlight is bright, stars are very dim. If a video or a picture is properly exposed for a sunlit subject, such as the Earth there behind me, or a spacecraft that is illuminated by the sun, then the camera exposure is not going to even be close to picking up the dim light of the stars. Conversely, if you see, like, on my channel, there's a series of time lapses from space that I did. Well, I didn't do. I mean, I rendered them and posted them, but they're time lapses. They're a series of images of like hundreds or thousands of images taken by astronauts, NASA and ESA astronauts, from the space station that show the Earth, city lights and the Earth flowing by below, as well as stars in the background. Now, you can see stars there because each photo is a long exposure. For example, the most popular of my time lapses, I think, is the one with the that shows the rocket launch from space. The ISS flew over Kazakhstan at night while Soyuz MS-10 crew launch was happening. You actually see the rocket launching from space, which is amazing. But so, for example, those photos had an exposure time of 1/5 of a second with an ISO that is a light sensitivity of like 12,500, which in photographic terms is really light sensitive, super light sensitive. If you took a photo or a video with those settings in the daytime, well, you couldn't take a video because 1/5 of a second would only allow you a 5 frame per second frame rate, which is less than any, like, you don't take video at 5 frames a second, but you can take a series of photos at 5 frames a second. Anyway, if you were to take a photo at that speed in the daytime, it would be completely washed out, pure white. Similarly, if you had the sunlit Earth in the background and you exposed your photo or your video so that you could see the stars in the background, you wouldn't be able to see any stars anyway, because the Earth would be so bright that it would, the Earth itself would be completely pure white from the exposure, and it would bleed over the rest of the image, so your entire image would be just a white blur. And that's just sort of photography 101. Stars equals dim, sunlight equals really bright, like millions of times brighter. So now, if you mean why don't you see the stars from the ground, that's a totally different matter. I mean, stars do remain dim. They are quite dim. But if you're trying to view stars from anywhere near a populated area, then you're probably experiencing a lot of light pollution, like we do here. I mean, I can walk outside at night and barely be able to see the Big Dipper, which is very disheartening because, I mean, if you go to a bona fide dark sky location, it's like a blanket of stars, over your head once your eyes adjust. But here in, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, not so much. So we have light pollution to worry about. We also have earthshine, or earth glow, I guess, earth glow, which is actually a glow in our upper atmosphere, even at night, from chemical interactions taking place between the magnetosphere, the solar wind, and cosmic rays in our upper atmosphere that actually cause sort of a green glow, a dim green glow in our upper atmosphere at night. You can see it very well in photos and videos taken from orbit, because there's literally a layer of green. It almost looks like aurora, but it's not. It's Earth glow. And there's also, you know, humidity, particulates, dust, and things in our atmosphere that get in the way. Fortunately, the gases in our atmosphere, the primarily nitrogen and oxygen, argon and some others, are quite clear. You know, they may make the stars twinkle, but they don't really reduce. They reduce specific wavelengths, but not in the visible spectrum. You know, so yeah. I think they severely inhibit infrared wavelengths of light, but not so much in the visible spectrum. So we can still see the stars. We just need to be in a dark sky location. So everybody move to the Atacama Desert in Chile, and you'll have a great view of the stars. All right, let's see. James has a very important message. Cyan is sus. Cyan. Okay, a little among us. Mohammed Ayman bin Mazlan. Best part about SN8 flight for you? SN8 test flight? The best part of the Starship Sn8 test flight for me was probably the flip at the end. When it did that, I was like, holy cow, that was a fast flip. I mean, we have, like, literally, humankind has never in the history of rocketry seen a vehicle maneuver in a controlled fashion like Starship Sn8 did. Normal rockets, you know, would break apart if you tried to do that. They would buckle and rupture and blow up. But Sn8 did some amazing things, and ultimately it didn't land successfully, but it came close. And perhaps most importantly, SpaceX knows why it didn't land successfully, and they're going to fix it in the next iteration. So, Liaon Fox, can we change Mars to habitable planet? Is it even possible? So, terraforming Mars is a long time sort of romantic vision of a lot of people, because Mars is the most easily, even though Venus is much more similarly sized and massed to the Earth, it's very close to the same size as Earth. It has that horrible, choking, thick, poisonous atmosphere with incredible temperatures and pressures and acidic sulfuric acid rain and so on and so forth that would make it a very tough place to live unless you were somehow like in a floating, you know, city in the atmosphere or something, a la, you know, Star Wars. But Mars is the most easily habitable of locations outside of our own planetary system, our own Earth-Moon system. It has an atmosphere, but not much of one. It's only, 6% of the density of ours, and it's almost all carbon dioxide. You know, it's not known whether anything will grow in the Martian soil. I mean, we would probably need to bring our own, you know, nutrients and things like that to make things grow there. There is water on Mars, but it's locked up in the form of ice, and there's very little water in the atmosphere. The oxygen molecules are tied up in the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and also in the iron oxide, the rust of the Martian regolith, which covers the planet. So there's lots of oxygen, but it's locked up in other molecules. And so in order to terraform Mars, to make it habitable by humans, first of all, you need an atmosphere. And how do you give a planet an atmosphere? I mean, in the movie Total Recall, the original, the only one that matters, you know, there was an alien facility underground that had these giant pistons that heated up the ice core of Mars and spewed out perfectly breathable air. creating an atmosphere, but we don't have any such tools at our disposal. I mean, you could add oxygen to the atmosphere by, you know, by comets or you know, somehow. I mean, getting oxygen out of iron oxide, out of the surface rocks, is going to be very difficult, very energy intensive. I mean, you could nuke Mars like Elon has proposed, but then you'll have an irradiated planet. But we kind of already have an irradiated planet because Mars does not have a global magnetosphere like we do. So Mars is constantly under bombardment by solar radiation and cosmic radiation. And its atmosphere is thin enough that very little of that radiation is blocked before hitting the surface. And so the whole surface of Mars is just constantly being radiated, similar to the moon. So, yeah. And that lack of magnetosphere is going to be a big hindrance to trying to terraform Mars, because even if you were to magically, over the course of probably centuries or millennia even, give Mars an atmosphere, the atmosphere would be stripped away by high energy particles constantly streaming from the sun, and causing, you know, the molecules in the atmosphere to be bounced out of Mars's orbit. Now, it may be possible in the future to construct some sort of magnetosphere generation device on the sunward side of Mars that sort of creates a protective magnetic sheath around the planet so that the solar radiation can flow around that. But that is science fiction technology at this point. We don't have anything on the radar that would even remotely be capable of producing a planetary magnetic field besides a planet itself, such as our own. So, and we're certainly not going to be moving Earth in between Mars and the Sun. So, not really. I mean, unless you're talking like many thousands of years in the future where we have some Star Trek-like technology, I don't see us terraforming Mars pretty much ever. It's too big I mean, like, we don't have the means to do stuff on that kind of scale. You know, we're not a Kardashev 2 civilization or whatever. It's still an intriguing idea, and we can still live in habitats. We can live in habitats underground. We can live in habitats, domes on the surface. But you still, even on the surface, you still have to worry about the radiation, which is why, even though it may be dreary, underground is probably our best bet for Martian habitats, similar to on the moon. All right, that was long-winded. JIA CAO. So what was that? Oh, so was that maneuver essential, referring to the flip maneuver at the end of Starship Sn8's flight, or do you think we may have another option of safe landing? That is the maneuver. So the flight profile for Sn8 was to launch vertically, cant off to the side, or angle off to the side a bit, pitch over into a belly flop maneuver, descend in a controlled fashion using the flaps to aerodynamically control the balance it out on its descent, and then at the end, kick back vertical again using that flip maneuver and land propulsively. Now, it almost worked, and the main reason it didn't work was because they lost thrust. They lost one of those engines, and I don't know if the one remaining engine was even at full throttle. So, oh, hello. There's a little Bennu down there. You want to say hi? Hey. Come here, buddy. Yeah, I know. Oh, here you are. Yes. So, yeah. You can't place a cat. You can only be there for a cat when they want to place themselves. So he does sit on me and cuddle, but usually not for very long. And if I move at all, he goes away. So this is sleepy time, mid-afternoon. So in answer to your question, yes, pretty much the flip maneuver of the SN8 is essential because they have to descend using the flaps to control the descent, and they have to reorient themselves vertically. Now, it's possible they may be able to do so in a less violent manner because that flip was really aggressive. I mean, it shocked me when they did it. I was like, wow. But yeah, that's how it's going to land. Now, I'm not sure if anybody has yet calculated the G-forces in the nose cone area, which is where any potential future humans would be riding. Because the plan for this vehicle is to carry humans eventually. So, but based on the video footage we have, it should be calculable based on the rate of descent, the rate of turning, and the known dimensions of that nose cone area. We should be able to fairly easily calculate the G-forces that any human occupants would experience during that maneuver. And I'm sure it's well within, I mean, people who ride to space are used to being bumped around a lot, so especially if they ride on Soyuz. Snow Kittens, do you think Angara will launch before the end of next year? Do you mean production? I mean, their test flight is, this week, later this week. Do I think they will launch in production before the end of next year? I have no idea. I mean, the time interval between test flights was 6 years, so who knows? John Hill, is there any news about SLS system? I haven't heard anything recently. Nor have I, actually. Now, granted, I don't do a lot of time. I don't spend a lot of time sort of trawling, casting my nets in the forums and Discord chats, etc., of various, programs, Artemis and SLS and all that stuff. So I don't know what the progress on SLS is. It's been pretty quiet for a while. The last big event regarding SLS was Core Stage Complete, which was announced many months ago by NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. But I also haven't heard any news on the Lunar Gateway. I haven't heard any recent news on the Orion capsule. I haven't heard any news since the big reveal, like, what was it, 2 years ago or something, of the, I think it was last year, the Blue Origin lunar lander prototype. I haven't really heard much of anything on any of that, at least that's been loudly announced publicly. So hopefully they are working on it, because we all want them to get up there. Kirstine Gray, when is the new airlock going to be docked to the ISS, and why did NASA want to put it on the ISS with only 4 years left of funding? That's actually a good question. Why would they install a brand new airlock when the ISS itself only has 4 years left on its current, approximately 4 years left on its current contract? And so this is actually a topic that was just discussed on last week's The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which is a great podcast, I must say. I listen to it regularly. And they were talking about like the design life of the ISS was approximately 15 years, or the mission was originally intended to be approximately 15 years, but they designed the equipment to last about twice that long, but it's modular, so if needed you can sort of replace old parts with new parts rather than just scrapping the whole thing. Like, for example, there's been some noise that the Russian segment of the space station, which is about half the station, is falling apart. But there've been sort of conflicting reports on that count. Now they have had some leaks. Like, I think all of the leaks that have happened, the couple of leaks that have happened, have been on the Russian side. Actually, one of them was in an attached Soyuz module, not the station itself. But so yeah, there's the question of why are they installing brand new, and they just replaced all the batteries. Like, they spent many months and many spacewalks replacing all of the big batteries that store the energy from the solar panels. They replaced the old nickel hydrogen batteries, I think, with lithium-ion batteries. And yeah, so why did they do that if there's just if the space station's only slated to last a few more years in its contract or whatever? So maybe the hope, I think the hope is that through public-private partnerships, commercialization, maybe contract extension and upgrades to modules, or replacement of old modules, that the ISS can continue to exist in perpetuity. But getting that from theory to actual hardware floating in space is it takes a lot of work. It takes politics, it takes budgeting, it takes companies stepping up and taking ownership, things like that. But it is hopeful that they're installing new components. So let's see, anything else? MVM Motovlog Music, will they have please fasten seatbelts in the Starship? Maybe. They may even have a plaque that says made on Earth by humans. PEEBB, excuse my ignorance. Is it another belly flop today or more testing? There's no testing today of Starship. That already happened last week. And that was a belly flop and flip and attempted propulsive landing test that ended in a big bada boom. All right. Any more questions? I think that's it for now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all so much for coming. I wasn't sure if I'd have this ready. If I missed any questions, I apologize. Maybe you can comment on the video, and I'll get to you there. But thank you so much for coming, and take care. And until the next stream, keep it raw, and I'll see you next time.